And I would like to introduce our panel tonight. On my left is Dr. Elizabeth Klett. You will remember her if you came to our Cinderella dance talk a couple of years ago. And the year that we did 3 Shakespeare ballets, she was very involved with that. She is a professor of literature at University of Houston Clear Lake and the author of Choreographing Shakespeare. Yes, exactly. You can clap. Yes. During that year, she had the opportunity to interview Stanton as well as David Bentley, and so Houston Ballet is featured not only on the cover, but quite prominently throughout her text, and it's by Routledge Press, so get it while it's hot. So she's here to give us some context on the traditional Sleeping Beauty fairy tale, and then she asked me to get her a star-studded panel, and so I did just that. To her left is Karina Gonzalez. I don't need to introduce her. As you know, Karina joined the company in 2010 and was promoted to principal dancer in 2013. And to her left is Alyssa Springer. This is her first Dance Talk panel, so make her feel welcome. Alyssa joined the company in 2012, and I think of Alyssa and her cohort from the Houston Ballet Academy. They have a very special place in my heart because I started at Houston Ballet around the same time that they were in the academy, so it's been a thrill to watch she and her cohort move up through the company. Alyssa joined the company in 2012 and was promoted to soloist in 2019. And then to her left is Bridget Kuhns, also somebody who I watched as a very young person in the academy, who joined the company in 2013, I think so, and was promoted to soloist in 2017. So welcome to Bridget. And without further ado, I will pass the mic off to Dr. Klett. Enjoy yourselves.
Thank you so much, Jen. I'm very honored to be here to speak with this wonderful panel about their experiences dancing the roles of Aurora, the Lilac Fairy and Carabosse in Ben Stevenson's ballet. Before we get to the interview portion of the talk, I'm going to speak briefly, I promise, about the history of the Sleeping Beauty story, so we can see how it relates to this very modern version that will be performed by Houston Ballet. So like all fairy tales, including Cinderella, if you were here for that one, you kind of know this already, the Sleeping Beauty tale is not a single story, but part of a long tradition of stories that fall under the Sleeping Beauty or Briar Rose tale type. So there are many different versions of the story that span the globe. They retain certain core elements, but they differ in their details. And the tale dates back at least as far, probably further, but at least as far as the medieval period, so the Scandinavian and Germanic myths, which include the legend of Brynhild or Brunhilda. So if there are any opera fans out there, you probably know in Wagner's Ring cycle, he tells her story. She is also put into an enchanted sleep, and she can only be wakened from that sleep by a kiss from the man that she's supposed to be with. It doesn't really work out all that well for Brynhild or Brunhilda. Her story is not that happy, not as happy as Aurora's. But there's also a correlative with the spindle. She's pricked with an enchanted thorn, the thorn of sleep that puts her into the sleep. So more well-known versions that date from the 17th century and the 19th century are Giambattista Basile's Sun, Moon, and Talia. That's an Italian version from the Pentamerone of 1634. Charles Perrault's version, La Belle au Bois dormant. That's from 1697. And of course, the Grimm brothers' version from 1812, Briar Rose or Dornröschen. So, since we're going to be talking about the women characters in the ballet version, I'm going to just provide a little bit of background about how women tend to be portrayed in the Sleeping Beauty tale type. So in this tale type, as in many fairy tales, there are kind of complicated and often, frankly, quite negative relationships between women. There are usually older women who are very antagonistic and sometimes violent towards younger women in these stories. So this tends to conceptualize women's roles as a kind of duality. They're either an innocent maiden or they're an evil witch. So, I know. In the Sleeping Beauty tale type, we have often more than one malevolent older woman. So, of course, we have the sort of villainess character, Carabosse, in this version. In the versions by Perrault and by the Grimms, there's an evil older woman who shows up to the christening feast for the infant princess. In Perrault, she's the wicked old fairy that's sort of like Carabosse. And in the Grimm story, she's actually a wise woman. That's what she's called. She's the 13th wise woman. In both versions, she feels slighted for one reason or another. The royal family didn't invite her. They don't have enough plates for her in one version. I love that. They only have 12 plates. And so they don't invite the 13th fairy. And you're thinking, it's the royal family. Surely they could have gotten a 13th plate, but they didn't. So she's mad and she issues her curse of spindle-induced death on the princess. Now, Perrault and Grimm offer us a second antagonistic old woman, and she's in the picture, I think. So despite the king's decree that all the spindles in the kingdom be destroyed, the princess discovers a hidden room in the castle where there's an old woman who's spinning, and that's where she pricks her finger. So this woman is not necessarily deliberately doing anything terrible to her, but she's another version of the kind of antagonistic older woman. In Perrault's story, he offers us a third evil older woman. He just didn't know when to quit, Perrault. So in this version, it actually expands beyond the wedding, and so we meet the prince's mother, who becomes the princess's mother-in-law, and she is an ogre. And I'm not making this up. It's fantastic. So she wants to eat the queen and her two little children, and so they have to kind of pacify her and trick her into thinking that she's consumed them. And eventually she falls into a vat of snakes, toads, and other horrible creatures and gets eaten herself. You can't make this stuff up. So another famous version, of course, of the evil fairy is from the 1959 Disney film of Sleeping Beauty. So they give us Maleficent, which is their name for her. And so she's like Perrault's old fairy and the Grimm's wise woman. She appears at the christening to issue her awful curse. And there's no explanation of who she is or why she's so bad. She's simply intelligible because she's related to these many old malevolent women in the fairy tale tradition and in Disney film versions of those stories, Cinderella, Snow White, etc. It is worth noting, of course, though, that Disney has revisited this character and provided her with that backstory in their Maleficent films. So it's kind of interesting that they decided to undo that stereotype of the evil witch that they helped to promote. Turning to the world of the ballet version of this story, so Marius Petipa's 1890 ballet version names the evil fairy Carabosse, and he provides her with a retinue of rats and creepy attendants. The role was originally performed, you can see in the picture, by a male dancer. So it was created by Enrico Cecchetti, who also danced the role of the Bluebird, which I think is a really interesting pairing, Carabosse and the Bluebird. The role is still performed by men in many versions of this ballet, not this one. But it's also performed sometimes by a female character dancer in a kind of costume as like an old hag. So in this version, in Ben Stevenson's version, she's young and vital and beautiful, and she wears the most amazing costume, which really troubles the line, I think, between her and the Lilac Fairy. So there's definitely a difference between the two of them, but perhaps it's less marked than if she were played by a man. So the Lilac Fairy is supposed to be the antithesis of Carabosse. She's somewhat analogous to the sort of fairy godmother character type that we see in a lot of fairy tales. The corresponding character in the Grimm's version is the 12th wise woman, the one who did get a plate, unlike the 13th wise woman. And so she alters the curse so that the princess doesn't die, but she plays no other role in the story. The Lilac Fairy, however, is similar somewhat to the youngest fairy from Perrault's version, who counters the evil fairy's curse, but then also returns 16 years later and puts the whole kingdom into an enchanted sleep. Petipa expanded the role even further so that the Lilac Fairy leads the prince to the vision of Aurora. And this, I think, suggests her power and her importance within the narrative. And I think that was an intentional choice to give that role the agency that perhaps she doesn't have in the narrative versions. When we think about the character of Aurora within the sort of tale versions, She's a character that a lot of critics have kind of criticized for being particularly stereotypical, in particular that she kind of reinforces the stereotype of feminine passivity. She is asleep for much of the story. So Simone de Beauvoir, for example, noted the differences between the adventurous, active prince, a stereotype of masculinity, and the very passive princess who submits, she waits, and she's asleep. And she just wakes up and immediately, falls in love with the prince. So you can really see the kind of stereotypical duality. I think, however, ballet is amazing for many reasons, but in part because it inevitably challenges this reading of male activity and female passivity, because female dancers are active. They move. That's what they do. So it's Aurora's spirit that provokes the prince to fall in love with her rather than her passive beauty. So even earlier in the ballet, when she dances the famous Rose Adagio with her 4 suitors, it's her strength, her incredible strength and her power that allows her to remain balanced on point. She is not passive. She accepts the roses from the suitors, but she doesn't defer. She defers choosing any of them. So this suggests, I think, her playful resistance to this passive feminine role that de Beauvoir kind of puts onto the textual Aurora. So she is going to choose more actively in the ballet version. So that is my introduction, and we're going to turn now to the Q&A with the dancers. And I wanted to start with Karina. Could you say a bit from your perspective about Aurora's character and what kind of female character you think she is and how she's portrayed through dance?
Yes, I actually love the last section about the role of the strength of the female part of her. Because if we talk about other ballets or other role, I think Aurora is one of the most difficult technically roles for a ballerina, especially the first act. We actually joke sometimes because the prince is sitting in there. He doesn't come until the second act. And Aurora, after the first act, she have danced her heart out. So yeah, that's interesting to hear that perspective from you. But yeah, I see her. I think she goes through 3 different sections during the ballet. Her first act is, she's 16 years old in her party when she needs to decide to marry one of these 4 sailors, that's how you say, or princes, or I don't know how
Suitors.
Suitors. And actually I think during the Rose Adagio, she doesn't really choose one. She's, I guess she's not playing with them, but she's just being her and enjoying her party, I guess. Her variation is personally, it's one of the hardest, just because after the Rose Adagio, you're so incredible tired. And I think that's the challenge for any Aurora. It's just the stamina that you need to get to the point of you just running the ballet and being okay with that. The second act is when she's a kind of like an image for him, and Lila presents her to the prince, and I have played 2 different ways. I have done few versions of this ballet, and I remember in my last company I portrayed her a little more sorrow, and her calling was sad, and here it's actually hopeful. And I remember getting a lot of corrections about that. About it's not sad. You're actually calling him for to save you. And in the third act, it's completely a mature Aurora. It's elegant. It's pure classical ballet. And yeah, I think it's a wonderful role, but it's one of the most difficult for any dancer.
And what about Act 3?
Act 3 is her wedding.
Yeah.
And I think that's when she, I think that's when she becomes a woman, and decides to marry this man that she chose. Well, I guess she didn't choose. He came to her. But she said yes, I guess. But the party dates, it's one of the most famous classical ballets and the pureness in the steps. I think that's when it's a challenge to get. We have a beautiful coach this past few weeks, and one of the things that she mentioned, it was that it's not, because sometimes we think about classical very rigid, and it's the opposite. It's just being, you're still pure, showing your classical technique, but your steps and have to be so clean and being, you're a princess at the end.
Yeah. I just love the idea that, ballet can do something that a story can't, because you'd think that you'd have more freedom in a story to do whatever you want, right? But in fact, the second act of the ballet, Aurora is able to be present even though she's sleeping. Yeah. So that's nice to think about how her journey continues throughout the entirety of the 3 acts, even though she's seemingly in this very passive role.
Yeah.
So
I think that's one of I think that's when she goes into 3 different roles, I guess. And I think being a vision, how do you portray that? And I think we play a lot with arms and the positions. We always talk that your arms go after the step. So if you go there, your arms get there later. So you feel like you're floating in the air. So I think that's one of the things that we kind of try to portray, especially in the second act.
Mm-hmm. And do you have anything else to share about the Rose Adagio? I know it's one of the most, it's one of the most famously difficult pieces of classical ballet in the repertoire, right? So.
Yes. Well, I have wonderful memories and really scary memories. This is my 6th time doing the role. So I did twice in my last company. My first time there, I was 18-year-old, was my first lead role. I was a core member, and they gave me the opportunity to do Aurora.
Goodness.
And the guest artist was Viviana Durante, which is a star at Royal Ballet. So of course, this is 18-year-old, rehearsing with this wonderful, amazing dancer. The first few days I cried all day long because I was like, I can't even do what she's doing. And I remember my teacher saying you can't be here. You just be inspired by what she's doing and learn from that. So that first time, of course, was crazy. It was really crazy. Then the second time, I was ready to do it. I've been in stage already, so I love the opportunity to do it again. Actually, my second time during the Rosa Dash, I was so confident. I was so ready to do my balances. This is one of the most difficult sections to let go. In your balance, you have to change the voice, and you're so tired. Your supporting leg is so tired. But I was there. I was confident. I didn't touch any of the boys. And then when I let go, I twist my foot during the show. And that's just the beginning of her entrance. So that taught me so many things. One was not being so greedy in the sense that I wasn't done. So my mind, I was so happy of my big balance that I just let go of everything. And I remember the teacher saying, "You're not done until you're done." So I kept that in my mind all the time, not just for this ballet, but we're playing. We're not playing, but we're working with our body. So if our mind is not with our body, things can happen. Yeah. So also I learned that I wanted the curtain to come down and I wanted to start over again, but I couldn't. So I have a second and third act to finish. And it was hard for me to let go what just happened. I mean, I heard the audience saying, "Whoa," so. And so it was difficult for me to keep going and forget what just happened. But the show needed to go on. So I did. And the rest was fine. So I did learn I learned 2 things. To be done when it's done and celebrate after. And to let go sometimes. Not always everything is perfect, and you just have to keep going. The other story I have is I was a guest artist in Teatro Colón in Argentina, and that stage is
Oh my goodness.
So, and I needed to do Aurora. So when I stepped that first day on that stage, I was like, I can do this. I can do this. Gladly, I have few days to rehearse, but it's different. It's like to find your balance in a stage like that. It was a challenge.
I can only imagine.
Especially to jump up. Like going down, I feel like my whole energy was going down, but going up, I needed to to have even more stamina for that. So yeah, I think every time I have done the role, there is new challenges. But in a good way. I feel like I'm finding, especially this time around, I'm finding that how to manage my stamina. Like when the younger you are, you just want to push and you want to do every step right and using every muscle you can. I feel like I'm learning to manage how I can use my energy and my stamina through the role. So hopefully I can show that.
Great, thank you so much. Alyssa, so what do you think is the role of the Lilac Fairy in the ballet, and how does she compare for you to Aurora and to Carabosse?
Well, it's like you said earlier, she's kind of the antithesis to Carabosse. Oh, Bridget is Carabosse. In Ben's version, I kind of see her as the leader of the fairies. In the prologue, there are 5 other fairies who are bestowing their gifts on baby Aurora. And she is the most powerful one of them because she is able to kind of change Carabosse's curse on the baby and say that she'll fall asleep rather than die. And I find that she has a lot of responsibility throughout the whole ballet in carrying the story along. As I said, in the prologue, she'll reverse the curse, but then she kind of keeps her eye on Aurora for the rest of the time. When Aurora does prick her finger and fall asleep at the end of Act 1, she reappears to say, "It's okay, like I told you, she's only asleep." And then as she puts everyone else to sleep for the next 100 years, she keeps her eye out for the prince, who eventually she asks, would you like to see, the mime is, would you like to see one beautiful girl? And so he's interested, and she leads him to defeat Carabosse in the end. And so there's a lot of mime involved, and this is my first time doing Lilac Fairy, and I've had a good time rehearsing the dancing. There is this particularly difficult sequence of arabesques at the end of her variation, for instance, that I've been working towards, but the main thing that I'm trying to keep in mind is all of the mime, because she's so integral in telling the story, I don't want to forget any of it. In some of the rehearsals, I have, for instance, forgotten to say prick. So it goes, she will grow up, become a beautiful woman, and then I said she falls asleep without saying that she pricks her finger. So that's a new challenge for me, is keeping all the mime straight and telling the story correctly. Yes.
I love that. I think that that the idea that she's the kind of master of the narrative, that she pushes the narrative along, I just think that's so cool, because it's just not like that in a lot of the traditional Sleeping Beauty stories, that her character is either marginal or she's just kind of thrown in at a couple of points where she has to influence the course of events. But hearing you say that you feel like, it's so important that you get all of the narrative bits in there, because she is the narrative in many ways. That's great. What's it been like for you otherwise, dancing this role for the first time?
It's been fun. I love acting, so it's fun to tell the story in this new way, and to just bring the mime and the telling of the story into the dancing as well, because for instance, when she's asking the prince, oh, come follow me, and she conjures this is Act 2, she conjures the vision of Aurora that brings him ultimately to kiss her and to wake her up. When she's saying, oh, come follow me, she does these little arabesques, and so it's all kind of woven in, which has been interesting for me to find. Yeah.
I don't know if you can answer this, so I'm sorry for putting you on the spot, but do you have any thoughts about why she's the Lilac Fairy, or anything about the floweriness of her?
I'm not sure. I'm wondering that too. Yeah, I would love to know the answer.
Are there the 5 other fairies? Are they flower fairies too, or?
They have different gifts. They all have different gifts.
Okay.
So there's the beauty fairy who bestows beauty upon the baby. There is the generosity fairy. There is the fairy of charm. There is the song fairy who gives her a lovely singing voice and musical ability. Yes. And then there's also the temperament fairy. So they're all very unrelated to flowers.
Yeah.
But yeah, make a beautiful Aurora.
Yeah.
I don't know what the
Interesting.
Lilac Fairy's gift would have been if it wasn't to reverse the curse.
Right.
I've kind of wondered this week about this myself, because I've kind of said a few times. I was like, why isn't she the lavender fairy? Because like lavender is the herb that like helps you sleep, right?
Yeah.
But maybe because lavender isn't as appealing of a word, and lilac is a similar shade and color. I'm not quite sure.
I don't know. It's a good theory, though. I like that one.
Yeah. Lavender.
Well, let's move on to Bridget. So I want to get your thoughts about why you think Ben Stevenson chose to create Carabosse in this particular way, and how she gets portrayed through choreography, and also her visual presentation. And obviously we've got her costume over here, but I know she's got some great makeup. She's also got a lot of attendants, right, who are kind of come in with you.
Yeah. Before I came here, when I was still in the academy, the first time I ever did this ballet, I was actually a little monster for the company male who played Carabosse, and he had like 6 of us. And there was this scene with a cauldron, and we had to pass some little gross things, and he dipped the spindle in it and then like took it out. And I remember doing that, and I kind of remember thinking like, I mean, you're dressed like a woman. I could do that. I was like, I could be this evil character. And I think Ben made it a woman because she is a woman. You know, she is the evil fairy, the evil fairy who's not invited because they're kind of like, she might cause a scene, and we don't want that. This is our baby's born, it's her christening, we want her to be lovely. And so I think he realized that she is still beautiful, but she is very strong, and she's very determined in what she believes and what she thinks should happen. And sometimes I wonder if maybe if she had been invited, she would have just given her determination instead, or she wouldn't have given her a nasty gift. But no, I mean, she comes out, and she's very, the first time I did this role, I did her very, very, very evil. And I kind of look back at a video, and I'm kind of like, oh, yikes, like I was really mean. And I'm now trying to play it more like when I arrive, I try to start off slightly composed, because she wants to kind of be okay. She's like, okay, I'm here, I made it in, this is fine. And she's kind of looking, and she can hear people whispering, talking about her, like, oh no, she's here, she showed up, yikes, what's gonna happen? And then as she goes on and she starts to question the king and queen, she's like, well, this fairy's here, and this one's here, and he makes the list, why wasn't I on it? And she starts to get more and more irritated as she's there, to the point where once she realizes, she wasn't invited, and it was a choice. It wasn't just an accident. She was purposefully left off. She's like, okay, fine. I'm going to give you what you want. What I want to give you, really. And she has this really wonderful part of mime, and I think I love this part. It's telling the story. We're used to telling it with our bodies, and sometimes it's nice. We're just literally telling the story sometimes, which is great. And she, all of a sudden, after she's gotten really angry, and she's like, I got a plan for you, then she grabs a spindle, and all of a sudden she switches to be very sweet. And she's like, oh yes, your little baby is going to grow up, and she'll be beautiful. And then she pulls the spindle out from behind her back, and she's like, oh, and just a little prick. And then she hands it to her, and she's like, but no, she's gonna die. And it's like everybody just is like, oh my gosh. And she hands it right to the queen, like, look at it. What are you gonna do about this? I think, and she relishes in that. She relishes in the fact that she gets to get back at them. But yeah, I mean, I think I would like to imagine that if she had been invited, she wouldn't have been evil. She would have been like the person at the party, you're like, I have to talk to Carabosse, she's just gonna talk about herself or something. Like, she would have been that, but it's because she wasn't there, she was hurt. Like, her feelings are very hurt, you know, she is a fairy just like the rest of them, maybe slightly more powerful, not quite as powerful as a Lilac Fairy, I don't think, because her curse can be reversed, you know, if it couldn't be, then she'd be at the top, she probably would have been invited. But no, I mean, she's great. And the costume and the makeup, I mean, we're definitely treated very beautifully. We have this lovely green eye that almost looks like a butterfly that's on her face, and it's wonderful. You feel very fierce and powerful and very strong in your decisions, even though you die, and she probably should die, you know, she does something bad. No, she's great. It's fun to be evil. It's fun. I like it. Yeah.
The two of you are really evoking like the contrast, you know, with the two characters. No, it's awesome. I can see it. I can see you doing it. It's wonderful.
Typecasted.
No. That's not what I meant. I just meant like, you know, you're both just really getting into it in the different ways. But there's similar gesture and pantomime, right, that you both do. So you both have to do she's going to grow and then she's going to be beautiful thing. But then it's different, right, because the characters are different. So how does the difference come out between Lilac and Carabosse?
So once I finish my entrance bit in the first act, I think I've won. And I kind of run over to the corner and I'm going to go like rub my nose in the king and queen's face, be like, haha, I got you. And then Lilac Fairy comes on and is like, oh no, like, what are you doing here? And I kind of run away, and then she comes over and she asks me why. She's like, why are you here? What are you doing? And I kind of have to like relay my mime to her, and she's like, no, that's not gonna happen. And so we communicate to each other through mime with the whole stage watching, which is really wonderful. And so the first bit of our mime is the same. And I say she's going to die, and then Alyssa's like, she's asleep.
Yep, basically do the same mime, but as you said, say she goes to sleep. There is a moment where Lilac asks Carabosse, she says, I love their baby, you know, why do you want to kill her? And then
and I'm just like, she's gonna die. I just throw my fist down, and I'm so, at that point I'm so mad. There's a nice moment beforehand where when I walk away and I turn my back to her, and all our staff always says, and she comes up and she like really gently touches our shoulder, and they tell us, it's like she's so sweet it burns. Like you're like, oh, get off me. And so there's this wonderful moment where she's so gentle, and we're just like, no, like I don't want her near me, because it's like her sweetness and her love is kind of like evil to us in a sense, because this is all we know. It's really cool. I like that moment with it.
And then once you repeat your curse to the Lilac Fairy, and she says, well, no, you know, instead of dying, she's going to fall asleep. Then she continues the conversation, and she says, and there is one handsome prince who will kiss her, and she will wake up. And that's kind of the end of their conversation, because I feel like Carabosse comes in to try and get another word in, but Lilac kind of hovers up above and says, that's it for now. And so then, so Carabosse decides to leave in an explosion, and so that's kind of the end of that conversation. But yes, the Lilac Fairy is the one who adds the bit about true love's kiss being the solution to it all.
So maybe Lilac's actually not as sweet as she seems, because she finishes the conversation, right? She's like, mic drop.
It's
There you go.
definitely a moment. Like Carabosse comes up and she's so mad, and it's just, she's like, I'm taking the high road. And then we kind of like melt away. We're like, oh no, like what are we gonna do? Yep.
Sorry, I think I just want to add a little something there, because in the other versions I have done, this Carabosse, I mean, beside her super powerful, you know, character, also she's dancing full on. Like she's doing a crazy variation while she has to portray this character. And I think that's wonderful in this version, especially, because you see, it's not just Aurora and, you know, but this is a super lead woman that has the control in the ballet, as well as Lila. So I think it's such a beautiful production that you can see almost the entire company portraying different roles, but also in a really, really strong way.
Yeah, that's a nice point, because you're right that in a lot of other versions, it's not really a dancing role. It's more of a character part. So having the triad actually that you all kind of represent really kind of gives a nice portrayal of very 3 distinctly different dancing parts. So yeah, absolutely. And with that in mind, just a question for all of you, what you think about the portrayal of women in this ballet compared to other narrative ballets that you all have danced in. Would love to hear in particular how you think they compare to other fairy tale inspired ballets like Cinderella or Swan Lake, but really any narrative ballet that you'd like to comment on that you have experience with.
I mean, I would say that I think out of the more fairy tale-y ones that there are, I think you really do see the relationship between women who might be similar aged. It's not a mother figure being evil, like a stepmother, or it's not a guidance from a grandmother or this. It's like, at the time, yes, Aurora is a baby, but she kind of grows up to be 16, and these fairies, we're not old, or if we are old, we stay beautiful and wise and young like we are young. So it's very, we are similar, and it's very combative and showing that people have different personalities and how you manage that. And sometimes there are people you just aren't going to get along with, and other times you can communicate and you can change people's minds and you can calm them down and things. And I think that's really nice in this one. It's not such a disparity amongst who the conflicts are. It's very similar with our ages and our experiences.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I would say that, as I said before, it's such a great ballet to portray women. Like not every, but there's a big amount of girls doing variations, like really difficult variations. Third act is full of patates and the bluebird. It's also a wonderful role to portray from, and then have opportunities from core members to principal dancers doing the role. The variations of the fairies are amazing. I mean, sometimes I look at them and I'm like, oh, I do Aurora. I don't want to do that variation. Like, they're difficult. They're really challenging. So I think it's wonderful to give opportunities to women, I guess, and compare with other ballets. I would say, sometimes you come to see, Cinderella. I think it was more about Cinderella and the prince and the 3 sisters, But here, I think there's so many lead characters that. And it's not just about Aurora and the prince. There is so many lead dancers in there that you can enjoy during the show.
Right. Of course, you reminded me that there's the fairy tale characters that show up at the wedding at the end. The bluebird and Florine and the cats, right? And I can't remember who else is in this particular version.
As well. The 3 kind of just like 3 Joker-ish characters who do all the tricks,
right.
The big jumps and the turns.
Right.
And Jules Patakat as well.
Oh, yeah.
Right. I think there was a Little Red Riding Hood variation in the Petipa version as well.
I think in some versions, Cinderella and Beauty and the Beast also come to the wedding as well, but not in this version.
Yeah. That's wonderful. I was thinking of Giselle as well. I don't know, because I know you all recently did Giselle, and I didn't know if Mirtha and the Willies had any kind of crossover with Carabosse or anything like that. I don't know. It's a little bit of a different situation.
I think the style is so different, and I feel like I can compare. Giselle is so romantic, and even if in Mirtha is a little evil. I think it's just different. Like the energy is different.
She's sad because her guy never came to the forest and fought for her, and there's this her new recruit that she's like, okay, you're joining my army, and then it's like, well, this man's getting in the way. Where was my man? And so this moment she's on the side, she's kind of sad. She's like, wow, like I didn't have that. And in the end, we end up losing. We back away. We don't love wins, and in the sense of not curses broken or any of this. It's more of just like actually the triumph of love itself, and fighting for that, and how you do have to fight for love.
Did you perform Mirtha as well?
We actually were, I was Mirta and she was my Giselle. Yeah, we were together for that, yeah.
Excellent.
Actually, I was going to add, when I did the version, it was Carl Burnett version in Argentina, he actually added a pas de deux after the kiss.
Oh, okay.
So for me, it actually makes sense because it was just no kiss, marry me. You know, like, it was something, and there was a pattern, it was this beautiful, it was even like it was different because the ballet is so classical, and this pattern was very free and there was so much movement. So it was interesting for me to add that in that version, but it makes sense. It was like you can see the connection between her and the prince. It wasn't just that one kiss that made them fall in love, but
Right.
there was this beautiful pas de deux. And actually, I have to find out if he added a piece of music or it's a piece of music that sometimes is cut. So I'm not sure about that, but I actually love that version.
Yeah.
Then it wasn't that quick. There's something happened, and I think they created that love, forever love, to go to the third act and marry.
Through dance, which is lovely. I love that, you know, when a pas de deux kind of charts the sort of development of a relationship or gives you some, you know, information about the relationship, but all through movement. I just love that. We need to open it up to the audience at this point for Q&A. So if anybody has questions for our wonderful panel, go ahead.
For this, such a classical piece that all of you, I'm pretty sure, played so many times, especially Miss Gonzalez. So what is this in this upcoming show that you want to deliver to us that is something so new in your heart?
New in my heart.
What's
Wow.
new about the show for them this time?
This time, let's see. I don't think that I'm completely a different Karina after being a mom. So I feel like before I cared so much about that one balance that didn't work, or I couldn't do 3 periods, I did 2. I feel like I let go all of that. And I'm not saying that I'm doing less, but I'm putting my, I think my time on stage is so meaningful now. But I think I'm looking forward to perform, to really, really just perform and forget about that one little thing. Or, especially for this ballet, there is so many challenges sections that you can go home and cry all night long because I didn't stay as long as I wanted, or I didn't do my 3 periods as I wanted. So, and I feel I'm finding that, and because this ballet is so technically challenged, I feel like I'm looking forward to just do it and perform and be happy for whatever happened, and then go home and sleep with my baby. So.
Alyssa and Bridget, did you want to comment about what you want to do now for this production?
Well, like I said, this is my first time with Lilac Fairy, so it is a new role. But yeah, I'm really just trying to bring her good-natured spirit to the entire run of the ballet, I guess. All through, not just the dancing parts, like her variation and the blessing of the baby, but yeah, as she's kind of, I don't want to say fairy godmother-ish. Maybe she is. But yeah, just how she tries to move the story along and bring the happy ending. Yeah.
I would say, kind of like I said earlier, the first time I did Carabosse, I just did her completely evil, partially because I think I was nervous, and it's easy to just be tense and be mad, and not show multiple emotions. But I think this year I want to show that they're not human, they're fairies, but she's human just like the rest of us, you know what I mean? And it's like sometimes when you see someone on the bus and they kind of do something weird and you're like, oh, I don't like that, or I don't like, and it's kind of like, okay, hold on. Like you can't judge someone just by what they present to you that day, their entire character. And so I think I've been trying to find those moments where she shows like it's not like, you didn't invite me, I'm mad. It's like, wow, you didn't invite me. Like, I'm kind of hurt by that. And then it's like, oh, okay, calm down, let me listen to them now. So finding those moments where you see not a soft side to her, but a different side. So she's not just so one-dimensional in this one emotion that kind of overwhelms the whole stage, you know, because it's a lot to look at when she comes out. There's a lot going on, so. Yeah.
Great. Other question? Yes, go ahead.
How many other ballerinas play Aurora, dance Aurora, during this?
How many other casts?
How many
are playing
casts?
these different
So I
roles?
think this time around, I think there's 5 casts. 5, yeah. So 5 Auroras are on this time, and 5 Prince. Yeah. So, and it's wonderful. I think this is one of the great things about Houston Ballet. Then you can actually come and see so many casts, and you're gonna see the ballet so differently because we're all so different, and which is beautiful. So I invite you to come to many shows so you can see different casts. And even, I don't know how many casts of Lila.
5 or 6, not quite sure.
I think there are 4 Carabosses.
Yeah.
I mean, I hate to use a sports term, but I mean, Houston Ballet has such a deep bench. It's like, it's crazy. You know, that expression where they say you just got lots of talent that can step in to various roles. I mean, it's incredible.
Yeah, I also wanted to mention that this time around I'm just focusing on Aurora. But there are some dancers that are doing Aurora, Bluebird, another fairy. So they're on every night doing different roles. So there's one doing Aurora and Lilac Fairy. So it's just, so any night you come, maybe you see, that same person but doing a different role. So.
Other questions? Yes, go ahead, sir.
Fairy tales have played a really significant part in societal systems over the years. Those stories that help children deal with life events and different things like that. What do you think Ben Stevenson's rendition adds to the whole theme, the whole story of Sleeping Beauty and things like that? What's the underlying message that he's adding to this whole thing?
Are you asking me?
I'm asking you, whoever understands that.
Okay. I mean, I think that it's much more positive in its depiction of the female characters. I tend to agree with the critics who think that when we just look at the tales, that it's not one of the stronger tale types for women. Even the Cinderella stories, there's a lot of stories in which the Cinderella character is really feisty and really cool and fights back and takes charge of her own destiny. And there's really not that kind of variety in the Sleeping Beauty tale type. And so I love the ballet versions because the women do get to be active and, have more of a role. So yeah, that for me, that's really what it's about.
I understand that's perfect, because what I'm hearing is that the role women play in this is so much more powerful than a lot of other symbols.
Yes, definitely. I don't know if you all want to say anything? Other questions? Yes, in the back. I'm so sorry, I can't hear you. Ah,
Who else? Let's see. So, Yuriko is Monica, Mackenzie, Sue Young. So that's our 5 Auroras this time around. Monica.
and are you 3 playing other roles as well?
I also play the Beauty Fairy in Prologue. I do the Jules Padicott. And I'm also in the hunt scene, which is kind of our introduction to the prince before he meets Aurora. I think that's it. What else do I do?
I think you're also a friend.
Oh, I'm also
And
one of Aurora's friends. Thank
Are
you.
you also a cat?
Not
No,
this
you don't.
year.
You did cat last.
I did a cat last time, but not this year.
I know
yes.
Alyssa's casting.
Yes. I couldn't remember. Yeah, that's correct. Yeah.
I do quite a few of the same things. I'm also a friend. I also do the Countess, which is at the time the prince's fiance, who he's supposed to be with, and he's kind of like not feeling it. I'm not into you. And she's kind of like, oh man, she's only on stage for about the first 5 minutes, but it's very important to see that, he himself has this outside story and he's kind of not happy with his life, and so it's not that, he was completely drawn to her just by spell, but he was kind of drawn to Aurora in a search of a deeper life, a deeper relationship, deeper love, because he was kind of surface with the Countess because she's all flowery and just wants to ride horses and do fun things, and he's kind of like, well, no, like, let's talk, and she doesn't want to do those things. I also do one of the jewels. I'm also the temperament fairy in the prologue, and I think that's all I do. Yeah, plus Carabosse.
Oh, only that? That's it? Just the 8 things.
Yeah, and also I want to add that beside a million roles they're doing, we're also rehearsing the triple bill coming up.
Yeah.
So during the day, I can be doing Aurora in the morning, and I run Hush and one-on-one, and not just me, but I mean the entire company. This is what it is, which is wonderful. But it's also super challenging because we're going through 3 different kind of movements, from super classical to super modern, and so this is Houston Ballet Live.
Yeah. Again, that's something that makes this company so incredible. You all are so versatile. It's amazing. And one more question. I think we have time for one more question. Anybody? Jen?
I'm just curious about the kiss, and I've been thinking about this. We haven't done it this ballet since #MeToo. And Karina, you were talking about the vision scene in Ben's version is really about her actively calling. So maybe they don't just meet at the kiss and fall in love. Maybe they're, the way I'd like to think about it is that they're falling in love throughout Act 2. And I wondered if you have any thoughts about that.
Yeah, I guess that's a right way to see it. But I guess in my mind, I'm like, well, she's just a vision. And like I say, I actually like this version of being, I guess, happier or positive about it, like calling him instead of this sorrow way than I have portrayed before. And I think when I mentioned about the keys, and doing that, that extra little part of the, then, and I think that just in my mind, I'm like, well, you haven't seen this person before, so everything goes a little too fast for what I want. But yeah, I think you're right. I mean, the whole second act it's I guess they meet. But I think it's just more him seeing her than actually they're really, really looking into each other's eyes. And I think most of the time she's actually kind of running away from him. She's calling him, but every time he comes closer, she runs away. So I guess it's like, come to me, but you can't, really. So
Maybe for him, she's a vision, but maybe for her, he's in her dream. I don't know.
And the Lilac Fairy is there too. I mean, it's her agency in part, right, that brings them together. So she kind of is driving the narrative in that.
But he does decide, because like Bridget said, he is kind of searching for something else. He's not happy with the Countess. So I think the Lilac Fairy kind of makes it possible, but he does decide to go with her, even though he does have to stab a giant spider, Carabosse. And that's part of the story that she didn't tell him before he had to go and save the princess. So
Yeah, I mean, I'd say I would like to think sometimes when I look at it, it's kind of like, yeah, that's a little odd. It's just kind of like, wake up, love you, and then it's like, I do like to think that hopefully the Lilac Fairy in a way is bestowing the wisdom of the vision like to Aurora as she's sleeping, as a way that, so hopefully when she wakes up, she's not in total shock, it's not like her whole life is just changed all of a sudden. Like maybe as she wakes up, maybe it's more like, oh, like you're familiar. Like maybe I have seen you, like you would, that's what I kind of like to take out of it, is that in a way that's like a Lilac for her second gift. It's like, look, you've kind of met this man even though you haven't, you know what I mean? Maybe.
it reminds me of the Disney lyric, actually. I know you, I walked with you once upon a dream.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
I worked at Disneyland, so I know these things.
I think we do have time for one more, if there's one more question out there. Yes, go ahead, ma'am.
I have a question about the beautiful costumes. Like Carabosse, do you have your own costume, or do you all share one costume, or?
So for the most part, we all share costumes. Occasionally, not, I wouldn't say as much for Carabosse or for Lilac. There's probably duplicates of the Auroras just because they do so much more partnering. You need much more personalized costumes. But I mean, that's the original costume from like 30 years ago. You know, like, and they're built incredibly. So, you know, anybody who's done that role, there's like a little bit of their sweat, you know, boosting you on as you do the role, which is sometimes nice. You look and you see the little names. You're like, Lauren Anderson, oh my gosh, you know, like it kind of gives you this little boost. But no, I mean, they're absolutely wonderful. They're great. Yes, I know. My first summer, I had classes with you and we learned Carabosse. Me too. I remember that.
Yes, I wanted to add something about the costume, and I wouldn't have opened my mouth, I promise, except there was something that nobody knows about. When Desmond designed that, he also designed a cape.
Barb told us about that for the
that was
first
10
time.
feet long. And so we actually tried, sorry, to everyone in here.
Barb told us the other day about this.
This is Chrissy Richmond, who's a former principal dancer with Houston Ballet and a very fabulous Carabosse.
And there's some fairies right down here that we all work together. And Mimi. But I just wanted to say, because Desmond designed this cape, and we tried it. It was 10 feet long in the scene with the prince when we stab him. And the little guys, your little minions, got lost in the cape. And so they couldn't find anything to lift because it was all the cape, so we had to cut it. But it's stunning somewhere. I don't know where it is now. It had a beautiful, like, Maleficent collar. And it was unbelievable, but we couldn't use it. Anyway, we all loved hearing you guys talk about Ben Sleeping Beauty. It was wonderful. Thank you for doing it justice.
Yeah. Thank you for everybody. And there's extra fairies and auroras in the audience tonight, which is really special. And so appropriate with our 50th anniversary. So married to all of you. Hopefully you'll come to see, like I think it was Karina said, to multiple performances because there's all these different interpretations. And then we'll see you back here in a few weeks for the next dance talk featuring Trey McIntyre's world premiere. Thank you so much.